Psalm 100 from the Paleo Hebrew Scriptures. Make a loud noise. Shout for joy unto Yahweh the ever-living. Go to him before his face with a ringing cry of joy. Know him intimately and completely, for he, Yahweh the ever-living, is Elohayim. He has fashioned us, working by labor to produce us, and not we ourselves. We are his people and the small cattle of his pasturing. Go to him, and to his gate with confession, thanksgiving, praise, into his enclosure with hymns of celebration. Cast forth praise unto him, kneel and place a gift before him. Prosper his name. For Yahweh is beautiful, kind, upright, fair and agreeable. His hasad, desire and mercy, zeal and kindness, endure unto time of long duration. For as far as the eye can see or perceive, to the edge of the horizon and beyond, and his faithfulness circles from age to age perpetually.
Shabbat Shalom, bonjour, or as they say here in Italy, ciao. My name is noelhadley, coming to you from Tuscany region, just outside of Florence. I'm going to be here a couple more days, and I can't wait. Speaking of that, bonjour, I'll be back in France again in a couple days. I might do a broadcast from France, but by the time you see me next Sabbath or on preparation day, I'll be in Barcelona, Spain, and I'm coming to the end of my trip. We had a really good week here at the Unexpected Cosmology. If you haven't checked out yet the last couple of videos we did, I brought on Carly from Ancient Paths, and we talked about bioenergetics and life wave patch. That was 3 days ago or so. That was a great time. She was gave a lot of amazing information. And then I brought on the one and only Troy Miller yesterday. Some of you are like, who? And others of you are like, why? Troy Miller. And because I've been following his work for several years now, on and off. And of course, I was able to bring on Hunter Tylo as well, and Hunter and Troy Miller. The three of us, we had a great conversation about the lunar Sabbath, or he calls it the creation calendar. And I'm hoping that we'll be bringing him back again very soon, maybe this next week. Not 100% sure yet, but we are here for the Torah portions tonight. Bereshith, that would be the Paleo Genesis, week 3. Some of you just got off Sukkot, and you're on the crescent moon calendar, and you're starting Genesis 1 this week. So if you've been following along with me, regardless, thank you. I do appreciate that. Or maybe you're going to go a couple weeks back and catch up with a couple weeks ago. That's fine too. Let's get into it tonight. But first, I want to just show you guys. I'm at my store right now, The Unexpected Cosmology. Let's go to Joshua. And looks like I have a couple things in the cart right there. You can see right over there on stage left in the sunset orange color, kind of a copper color. That is I'm going to mispronounce that, but Washaha. I'll get it right eventually. That is Paleo Joshua, son of Nun. We are doing pre-orders right now, and we're going to be shipping this out maybe late October, as early November. We're really excited to have this translation out. Of course, Pamela completed the entire Torah. She completed Matthew. She did Song of Songs. She completed the first 4 out of 5 book of Psalms. I think we're really, really close to having the final volume of Psalms out, and that'll be like the end of an era, because the entire Paleo project started with Psalms, but not quite the end of an era, because she has a lot more coming. Revelation. I think she just finished Jude. A lot more coming your way. Lots to look forward to. So here's the thing about week 3. I told you guys that week 1, which is Genesis chapter 1 through chapter 6, is just, it's like it's torture trying to get through all that because there's so much material and you're just like, you can't do it. It is impossible to get through it all in one Torah portion, to get all the details. I mean, it's one of those things you spend your entire life working on. Well, week 3, I would have to say, is kind of similar to that. I was a little taken back doing this. This is my second Torah portion cycle of reading through it with you guys. I've done this, several times, several Torah portion cycles on my own. And I had forgotten how much is in Genesis chapter 12 through 17. So, it's one of those I just had to pick and choose. There's so much I had to leave out of this. And looking at this, there's like 70 pages. Not going to happen, right? So let's get right into it. This would not be the Paleo here. I guess you pronounce this Lika, or Lecha. Not really sure. That would be modern Hebrew, but it means go for yourself. And of course, these Torah portions are named after the first line or the first word that we see in these Torah portions. And this basically is referring to Abraham being sent out to the promised land, to Canaan. Now, we're not going to read Isaiah chapter 40 or John chapter 8. Just make a note of that if you would like to do that for your own study. These are what we would match up prophets and gospels. I know what needs to be done right now. I need another drink of coffee because this isn't starting well tonight. Thank you, everyone, for being here. I am hoping that next week, you can see like these curtains behind me. It's just not very epic. I've been to places here in Europe where I've had some very epic backdrops. I'll be honest, when I planned this trip out like 2.5 years ago, I imagined that there'd be weeks like the Matterhorn would be like right behind me. I'd be like, Shabbat Shalom, everybody. That never manifested, never came to fruition. And don't get me wrong, I like curtains. I really do. I'm one of those guys, I like tapestries. There's no shame in that at all. It's just, it's perfectly lovely curtains. I love staring at them. I work here all day. It just, it's not what you probably want to stare at in the camera. So my apologies. So here we go. Go for yourselves. Now, this passage right here, starting off on the right foot or the wrong foot, we're going to be looking at a midrash. Some of you, might put a little red flag up there. Why is Noel reading from a midrash? Isn't this Talmudic literature? Well, I read from the midrash for the same reason I read from the Drudge Report. I like to see what the rabbinical community is talking about. And this is what it says. And this is the midrash from Bereshith. So that'd be from Genesis. Abraham's father, Terah, as a god merchant, he had an idol factory where the family made statues. And you can see that right there, where Abraham is taking the wrecking crew out to the idols. I'm actually not sure what's happening here in the background, like why they're all praying. Is that, I don't know. In terms of art analysis, I don't know if that's his family or if that's Sarah, or I don't really know what's happening back there, but it looks like he's destroying the idols. We'll be covering that tonight. Sometimes he set up a stall in the market to peddle the divinities. One day, when it was young Abram's turn to mind the shop, a woman came in holding a dish of grains. Turning to Abram, she said, "Take this food and serve it to the gods," and left. Instead, Abram took hold of a large stick and ran around the place, smashing stones as he went. When he had finished, Abram put the stick in the hands of the largest idol and sat down to admire his work. Upon returning to his business, Terah, his father, was shocked to see his merchandise in shards. "Who did this?" he demanded. Said Abraham, "Father, I must tell you what happened. A woman came to the store bearing a meal for the idols. Naturally, I brought the food over to them, but you know how these gods are. They started fighting amongst themselves, each one trying to get to the food first. Well, the scene turned ugly, and this biggest idol took a stick and smashed all the other gods." And grabbing Abram by the shirt, Terah yelled, "Who are you trying to kid? Idols can't shout and kill. They're only stone carvings." And Abram answered him, "Does your ear hear what your mouth speaks? What are you worshiping? How can you worship that which doesn't see or hear when you call them, or do you any good? And this is the line that really stuck me here. And I think this is something that we could all identify with. I don't know if any of you have ever gone and smashed your father's idols while he was gone. I mean, I personally cannot identify with that, but I can identify with this last line here, what his father said. He said, but his father's only reply was, "It was the way of our forefathers." I'm reminded of Fiddler on the Roof, tradition, tradition, tradition. I mean, they could, I guess, to quote what Abraham says here, does your ear hear what your mouth speaks? Of course, that's the thing about a lot of us who have come out of the church, whether you came out of Catholicism, Protestantism, Orthodoxy, I don't really know where you've come out of, New Ageism, whatever. That was something a lot of us got, just the answers that we would get when we would ask. It was the way of our forefathers. It's passages like this that actually reminds me. I'll be opening up tonight with the Pilgrim's Progress. You can see here an old illustration, John Bunyan, of a Christian on his way to the celestial city. This is a little deceptive because in the book, he goes on a straight path. It's not a circular, winding path, but I guess, they didn't have enough paper to make that. So it's easier just to curl it around. But we'll be covering the section right here with the Slough of Despond and Pliable and Obstinate, who he meets as he's fleeing right over here, the city of destruction. I'm not going to read you the whole thing, but for all of you, quote unquote, red pillars out there, I almost said blue pillars. That was almost a Freudian slip, but I didn't say it. I said for all you red pillars out there. For all you red pillars out there, hopefully not purple pillars or anything like that. You know what I'm about to describe. I think you're going to identify with this. That moment in your life when you woke up and you realize that you were in the city of destruction, and you're like, "Oh my goodness, this is all going to be destroyed. This is all going to hell." And it says, now, John Bunyan writes, "So I saw in my dream that the man began to run." This is after he met Evangelist. He's on his way. Now he had not run far from his own door, but his wife and children, perceiving it, began to cry after him to return. Now, it's kind of messed up. I will say, now this is a dream, so there's a lot of symbolism here, but it's kind of messed up that, any guy would run off and leave his wife and children. I don't know if that was a big problem in John Bunyan's day. It kind of takes a different kind of tone today. But nevertheless, I would say probably half of you out there can identify with having a spouse or children who think you're a cuckoo. They think you're wacko. Especially when it comes to Yah's instructions in righteous living, they don't want anything to do with this. So they began to cry after him to return. And in this case, not just like the physically running away, but return to their lifestyle. But the man out his fingers in his ears and ran on. This is Old English here, crying, "Life, life, eternal life." How many of you did that? You ran out of your church, just plugging your ears, and you're just yelling, "Life, life, eternal life." So he looked not behind him, but fled towards the middle of the plain. This gets really fascinating here. The neighbors also came out to see him run, and as he ran, some mocked, others threatened, and some cried after him to return. And among those that did so, there were two that resolved to fetch him back by force. The name of the one was Obstinate, and the name of the other, Pliable. So think about when that moment you woke up. I don't know what it was. What was it? The flat Earth? For me, it was before flat Earth. It was the Agenda 2030, the FEMA camps, stuff like that. That was back during the Sandy Hook era. And I remember going around telling people about this, and they just thought I was nuts. I mean, flat Earth hadn't even come along yet. The Mandela effect, that wasn't even a thing yet. But I just want to go through, without reading all Pilgrim's Progress, I just want to read some of what Obstinate and Pliable tell him. Obstinate says, "What, and leave our friends and our comforts behind us? What are these things you seek, since you leave all the world to find them?" Of course, then Christian defines, he says, "I seek inheritance incorruptible, undefiled religion, and that which does not fade away. And it is laid up in heaven and safe there, to be be bestowed at a time appointed on them that diligently seek it. Read it, so if you will, in my book, which is a great, approach, right? Just give them the chapter and verse. Say, look, don't take my word for it. Don't take my I know your pastor's telling you, but just pick up the book and read it for yourself. And you could see that clearly there's something wrong with this world. Obstinate says, tush, away with your book. Will you go back with us or no? Because that's what happens, right? People try to gaslight you like you're the crazy one, and you just need to come back to they're just there to get you back into your sensibilities. And Obstinate says, come the neighbor Pliable, let us turn again and go home without him. There is a company of these craze-headed coxcombs. Have you ever been called a coxcomb? I have not. I've never been called one yet. I'm feeling a little left out. I've been called a lot of names, but never a coxcomb. That when they take a fancy by the inn are wiser in their own eyes than 7 men that can render a reason. This is like the peer review, right? Think about this with, I'm just going to, my channel is so shadow banned. I don't even care anymore. Think about it with like the vax, right? The prick, COVID-19 and all that. And for those of you who refuse to take it, who refuse to like mask up, and they're just bringing out the peer review and how you're immoral and, you don't care about other people and they do, and all this stuff and all the fear porn. So that was just a kind of interesting exchange. As you can see here, I'm never going to get through this tonight if I read the whole thing. But there is this, I love the fact that John Bunyan, as soon as Christian, he's on his way. And in Christian's mind, he doesn't really know how far he has to go, right? He might think that, once you get out of the state of destruction, it's smooth sailing from then. But what happens to him? We know that Pliable actually goes along. Obstinate's like, you're what I was going to use a bad word that Obstinate called Pliable. I won't do that because this is a family show. But Pliable and Christian are going along, and it says this. Now I saw in my dream that just as they had ended this talk, they drew near to a very miry slough that was in the midst of the plain, and they, being heedless, did both fall suddenly into the bog. The name of the slough was Despond. Here, therefore, they wallowed for a time, being grievously bedaubed with the dirt. And Christian, because of the burden that was on his back, began to sink into the mire. Of course, Pliable freaks out. He's greatly offended and angrily said to his fellow, is this the happiness you have told me all this while love? So think about this. Like, Pliable is going to go back to the village, and everyone in the city's destruction, they're going to be justified. Like, Pliable is going to be like, yeah, this guy is I was going to say it again, but he's a whatever. He's a jerk, right? Christian he's an ignorant fool. And they're all going to think that. And I know that all of us, we want to think that we're going to somehow be justified. Like someday our friends and family, they're going to get it. Now, a lot of them did since 2020, because a lot of them have woken up, but that's not the case in reality for most of us. Right. Christian has to be content going along, for the rest of his life, to the very end, and never being justified, at least in the eyes of the world. So let's get into it tonight. Let's start with the birth of Abram. Before we actually get into the actual reading tonight, I'm a little bit on edge. I don't know if you guys are, because I don't know if I'm going to make it tonight. Like, I'm like rolling the dice right now. I'm really risking it because I'm like reading from the book of Jasher, and we're not even starting the Torah portion yet. So, but if you're willing, then I am too, or I should say I'm willing if you are. And this is what it says. Let's just read the whole story, the birth of Abram. And I do want to give this great quick commentary on this beforehand. I don't know if the book of Jasher was all made up post Messiah, like early 80s. I don't know. Obviously, I wasn't there, right? We all know that the book of Jasher is mentioned in the Old Testament as a book that was written before Joshua, really. It was maybe just after Moses wrote the Torah, maybe before Joshua and Judges, or right around then. And of course, it's known as a missing book. The thing is that with passages like this one, people use one of the things people try to to try to discredit the book of Jasher is that it does match up with a lot of Talmudic literature. There are some kind of similarities in there. And then, of course, there's a whole debate of Melchizedek, which we're going to get to tonight, where people say that Melchizedek was actually invented, Shem was invented as Melchizedek after Yahshua as a way to discredit him. Could be the case. I don't really know. I wasn't there, but we'll talk more about that tonight. The thing is, though, is that the birth of Abraham has some similarities to the birth of Messiah, which is so incredibly close. There's parallels, clear parallels between the birth of Abraham and the birth of Messiah. And if the claim is true that the rabbinical Jewish community wrote that, they made it up, they made up Abraham's whole birth to somehow mirror Yahshua's. They're rejecting Yahshua, and it's almost a way to mock Yahshua and actually to put it onto Abraham. First of all, that's wicked, but it would actually show their total contempt for Abraham himself. Maybe that's the case. Maybe the rabbinical community just hates Abraham, and they're spiteful, and they're living a whole life that they actually, they really hate. I don't think that's the case. You can be completely deceived and still love your life and your heritage. All that to say, I wouldn't be reading for you the book of Jasher if I thought it was bogus. I do think this is the legitimate book that was smuggled out of Judea in the first century, ended up in Spain. What else do I want to say about this? It's my party, and I can cry if I want to. Let's get right into this. Chapter 8, Jasher. And it was in the night that Abram was born that all the servants of Thirach, that would be his father, and all the wise men of Nimrod, or this is in the Paleo, so this is Namrod. Keep in mind, we actually do have a Paleo version of Jasher. This is what I'm reading from. And this was not Pamela translating through the Paleo, it's just name corrections for everything you can get in our store. And his conjurers came and ate and drank in the house of Thirach, and they rejoiced with him on that night. And when all the wise men and conjurers went out from the house of Thirach, they lifted up their eyes toward heaven that night to look at the stars. And they saw, and behold, one very large star came from the east and ran in the heavens, and he swallowed up the 4 stars from the 4 sides of the heavens. And all the wise men of the king and his conjurers were astonished at the sight. And the sages understood this matter, and they knew its import. And they said to each other, this only betokens the child that has been born to Thirach this night, who will grow up and be fruitful and multiply and possess all the earth, he and his children forever, and he and his seed will slay great kings and inherit their lands. This is kind of interesting because they're prophesying about Abraham before Yahweh actually comes and tells him, that your descendants are going to be like the stars, or the sand of the seashore, and that kind of thing. But we see the same thing happening here with Herod when his sages come to him and let him know about the prophecies and how he's in great threat of his kingdom being overturned by messiahs. And the wise men and conjurers went home that night, and in the morning all these wise men and conjurers rose up early and assembled in an appointed house. And they spoke and said to each other, behold, the sight that we saw last night is hidden from the king. It has not been made known to him. And should this thing get known to the king in the latter days, he will say to us, why have you concealed this matter from me? And then we shall all suffer death. Therefore, now let us go and tell the king the sight which we saw, and the interpretation thereof, and we shall then remain clear. And they did so, and they all went to the king and bowed down to him to the ground. And they said, may the king live. May the king live. We heard that a son was born to Thirach, the son of Nuka-ur, the prince of your host. And we yesternight came to his house, and we ate and drank and rejoiced with him that night. And when your servants went out from the house of Thirach to go to our respective homes to abide there for the night, we lifted up our eyes to heaven, and we saw a great star coming from the east. And the same star ran with great speed and swallowed up 4 great stars from the 4 sides of the heavens. So right here, you can see the similarity with the stars. And some have speculated that this was what was called the Revelation 12 sign. I don't know if that's the case or not. Of course, the Revelation 12 sign happened, was fulfilled September 23rd, 2017. And, whether it is the Revelation 12 sign or not, I don't really know. I was there and I did see it that time around. I can't say I wasn't there. I don't know. I did see the Revelation 12 sign when it happened. And your servants were astonished at the sight which we saw and were greatly terrified. And we made our judgment upon the sight and knew by our wisdom the proper interpretation thereof, that this thing applies to the child that is born to Thirach, who will grow up and multiply greatly and become powerful and kill all the kings of the earth and inherit all their lands, he and his seed forever. And now isn't that amazing? Like that prophecy has been fulfilled, obviously, right? The nations are Israel. And now our Adonai and King, behold, we have truly acquainted you with what we have seen concerning this child. If it seems good to the king to give his father value for this child, we will slay him before he shall grow up and increase in the land. And his evil increase against us, that we and our children perish through his evil. And the king heard their words, and they seemed good in his sight. And he sent and called for Thirach, and Thirach came before the king. And the king said to Thirach, I have been told that his son was yesternight born to you, and after this manner was observed in the heavens at his birth. And now therefore give me the child, that we may slay him before his evil springs up against us. And I will give you for his value your house full of silver and gold. And Thirach answered the king and said to him, My Adonai and king, I have heard your words, and your servant shall do all that his king desires. So Thirach is on the surface saying that he will agree that he will bring forth his child, Abram, and he'll let the king slay him. This is Nimrod. And that he'll get exchanged for silver and gold as for payment. Let's see. Where was I? See, I get excited and then I lose my place. Anyways, let's start with verse 19 here. And Thirach said to the king, Aeon, son of Mored, came to me yesternight, saying, Give unto me the great and beautiful horse that the king gave you, and I will give you silver and gold and straw and provender for its value. And I said to him, Wait till I see the king concerning your words, and behold, whatever the king says, that will I do. And now, my Adonai and king, behold, I have made this thing known to you, and the advice which my king will give unto his servant, that will I follow. And the king heard the words of Thirach, and his anger was kindled, and he considered him in the light of a fool. And the king answered Thirach, and he said to him, Aren't you so silly, ignorant, or deficient in understanding to do this thing, to give your beautiful horse for silver and gold, or even for straw and provender? Aren't you so short of silver and gold that you should do this thing, because you cannot obtain straw and provender, feed your horse? And what is silver and gold to you, or straw and provender, that you should give away that fine horse which I gave you, like which there is none to be had on the whole earth? And the king left off speaking, and Thirach answered the king, saying, Like unto this has the king spoken to his servant. I beseech you, my Adonai and king, what is this which you did say unto me, saying, Give your son that we may slay him, and I will give you silver and gold for his value? What shall I do with silver and gold after the death of my son? Who shall inherit me? Surely then at my death the silver and gold will return to my king who gave it. And when the king heard the words of Thirach and the parable which he brought concerning the king, it grieved him greatly, and he was vexed at this thing, and his anger burned within him. And Thirach saw that the anger of the king was kindled against him, and he answered the king, saying, All that I have is in the king's power. Whatever the king desires to do to a servant, that let him do. Yea, even my son, he is in the king's power. Without value in exchange, he and his two brothers that are older than he. And the king said to Thirach, No, but I will purchase your younger son for a price. And Thirach answered the king, saying, I beseech you, my Adonai and king, to let your servant speak a word before you, and let the king hear the word of his servants. And Thirach said, Let my king give me 3 days' time till I consider the matter within myself, and consult with my family concerning the words of my king. And he pressed the king greatly to agree to this. And the king hearkened to Thirach, and he did so, and he gave him 3 days' time. And Thirach went out from the king's presence, and he came home to his family and spoke to them all the words of the king, and the people were greatly afraid. And it was in the 3rd day that the king sent to Thirach, saying, Send me your son for a price, as I spoke to you. And should you not do this, I will send and slay all you have in your house. so that you shall not even have a dog remaining. And Thurok hastened, as the thing was urgent from the king, and he took a child from one of his servants, which his handmaiden or his handmaid had born to him that day. And Thurok brought the child to the king and received value for him. And Yahuwah was with Thurok in this matter, which is interesting that, this is his father is an idolater. He actually makes idols, and yet Yahuwah was giving him guidance through this episode. Kind of interesting. That Nimrod might not cause Abram's death. And the king took the child from Thurok and with all his might dashed his head to the ground, for he thought it had been Abram. And this was concealed from him from that day, and it was forgotten by the king, as it was the will of providence not to suffer Abram's death. And Thurok took Abram his son secretly, together with his mother and nurse, and he concealed them in a cave, and he brought them their provisions monthly. And Yahuwah was with Abram in the cave, and he grew up. And Abram was in the cave 10 years. And the king and his princes, soothsayers, and sages thought that the king had killed Abram. It's interesting that the soothsayers knew all that they did, and yet they knew about the future of Abram and all this, but they didn't even understand. They thought he killed them, right? It's kind of interesting. There's a little bit more I want to read about this here, particularly this yellow section here. And Haran, the son of Thurok, Abraham's oldest brother, took a woman in those days. Haran was let's just skip this here. And when Abraham came out from the cave, he went to Nuck, that would be Noah, and his son Sham or Shem, and he remained with them to learn the instruction of Yahuwah and his ways. And no man knew where Abram was. And Abram served Noah and Shem, his son, for a long time. And Abram was in Noah's house 39 years, and Abram knew Yahuwah from 3 years old. And he went in the ways of Yahuwah until the day of his death. And he went in the ways of Yahuwah until the days of his death. I just read that. I guess I thought the line was really important, because there are no mistakes here during these Torah portions. As Noah and his son Sham had taught him, and all the sons of the earth in those days greatly transgressed against Yahuwah. And they rebelled against him, and they served other Allahayam. And they forgot Yahuwah, who had created them in the earth. And the inhabitants of the earth made unto themselves at that time every man his Allahayam, or gods of wood and stone, which could neither speak, hear, nor deliver. And the sons of men served them, and they became their gods, their Allahayam. Here's a quick, is this a quick passage? Actually, it's not so quick. It's a few chapters from the writings of Abraham. And I want to establish that the writings of Abraham amazingly mirrors a lot of Jasher. But the thing is about the writings of Abraham, as I pointed out, that I have found specific passages in this that also mirrors the Dead Sea Scrolls. And the Dead Sea Scrolls were not discovered for, I don't know, another 70 years before the writings of Abraham came to light. It says, before the death of Ham, the sacred garments were given secretly by him to his son Cush. This would be the serpent skin in the garden that was shed, that Adam and Eve were dressed in, that then went on to the ark. Ham steals it from Noah. He gives it to his son, who then gives it to Nimrod. Cush also kept them hidden, and in his old age gave them unto his son Nimrod or Namarad. And when Namarad was 20 years of age, he put on the garments, and he delivered great strength and power from them. Moreover, Namarad was instructed in all the secrets of the evil combination by his father Cain, for Cain had not perished in the flood. No time to explain that passage. You either know it or you don't. Wherefore Nimrod became a mighty man among the sons of men, and established his kingdom, and grew stronger and stronger in wickedness, after the order of the secret combination, which was from the beginning. For Nimrod spread his dominion over all mankind, save those in the city of Shalom. Now, Sham ruled the city of Shalom, and he was called Melchizedek. Or let's see if I can pronounce this correctly in the Paleo. Malachiah Zedek. That wasn't so hard. For he reigned as king under his father Noah, and was a priest of the Most High Allahayam. After the departure of Ham from the presence of his father Noah, Shem and Japheth dwelt together in peace under the benign rule of Noah. But in time, conflict arose among them, and Noah led the seed of Shem to a new land, which Yahweh showed him, where they built a city, which they called Shalom, the city of Shalom. Of course, as it would be where Jerusalem is. Noah invested his son Shem with authority to reign as prince of Shalom, and Noah devoted his days to instructing his people after the order of the ancients. And his people dwelt in righteousness and worshiped Yahweh their Elohim and served him. They established the order of heaven among them and sought after the city of Enoch. This is not the city of Enoch that, what's his name? Cain. I don't even know, that Cain built for his son Enoch. Remember, he built a city for his son Enoch. It was called the city of Enoch. There's a lot of duality in the first few chapters of Genesis. So there's two Enochs, as you know. And of course, the Enoch that ascended to heaven, this is his city. So they're seeking after this city. This is New Jerusalem. And Yahweh came among them and ministered to them, and those who sought for the gain of this world went out from among them. For they held all things common after the order of Enoch, and no man had above his neighbor. So this is a complete opposite of the city of destruction, right? So if you seek gain, then you stay in the city of destruction. But if you seek gain in the city of Enoch, you leave the city of Enoch. So complete opposite. Among those who went forth from the city of Shalom was Peleg, who traveled to the northwest and established a city after the order of his father Noah. For Peleg was the son of Abar, the son of Shalach, the son of Hakashad, the son of Sham. And his people sought after the heavenly order and obtained it, for they were caught up like the city of Enoch. So, of course, I've pointed out many times in the writings of Abraham, there are many people who are caught up in this book, not just Enoch. Enoch is specifically mentioned, but there were hundreds of people, probably maybe thousands. We don't really know how many, that were all caught up at different times in history. So you can't necessarily say that the rapture is, you could say, I guess, it's unbiblical, but you can't say it's non-extra biblical. I mean, there are accounts of people being taken up for their righteousness. Let me just skip some of this here. On the night I was born, this is chapter 22. On the night I was born, there were great signs in the heavens. And when Nimrod's astrologers saw them, they were astonished. And they spoke evil of me to the king, saying that surely I should overthrow his kingdom. Wherefore they counseled the king to purchase me of my father, that they might slay me, and thus frustrate the plans of Elohim. So here we can see this perfectly parallels Jasher. King Nimrod thereupon sent for my father, Thurok, and spoken to him of the words of the astrologers, and asked for a son in return for a great sum of gold and silver. But the spirit of Yahweh wrought upon my father, that he was loath to give me up to the king. On the night that I was born, a son was also born unto one of my father's concubines. And this child my father took unto the king, and the king slew him in my stead. For thus had Elohim ordained that I might grow up to serve him, the only wise and true Elohim, and strive to establish his order in the earth all my days. Thus my life was saved by my father Thurok, and he took me with my mother Amthilo and my nurse Adanuha unto a cave hidden in the mountains, some distance from the city of Or, where he secreted us and visited us each month at the Kadash. For my father thus informed the king that he went each month on the Kadash to a spot sacred to his family deity. Jumping up here to chapter 24. When I was 3 years of age, Yahweh visited me in a dream of the night, and he said unto me, Abram. And I said, Here am I. And he said unto me, Abram, I am the Elohim of your fathers, Peleg and Shem and Noah. It is I who preserved your life when the wicked king Nimrod would have destroyed you. For I softened the heart of your father that he should hide you away. This I did, for I have a mighty work for you to do in establishing my order upon the earth. And verily, I say unto you, I, the end, through you will this wicked Nimrod be destroyed from off the face of the earth. So, I mean, Abraham said that Nimrod spoke a wicked, evil thing about him. But, I mean, it's true. it was true that he was there to wipe off Nimrod's kingdom off the face of the earth. Behold, you shall remain in this cave with your mother and your nurse for yet 7 years, which would be at the age of 10. And at the end of that time, you shall depart, and I will send my angel to guide you into the city of your father Noah, where you shall be instructed in the way of life. And from that time forth, Yahweh instructed me often in dreams of the night, that my mind was opened to the ways of his kingdom. All right, and then it talks there about how he went on to the city of Shalom. Now, there's one more passage I just wanted to cross-reference here. This is the travels of Noah into Europe, and I told you that when you go with the Greek LXX tradition, they what I really love about the travels of Noah into Europe, and again, I wasn't there, right? Don't really know, but it basically rectifies the Abraham Nimrod situation, because according to the Greek LX timeline, they should not have been alive at the same time on the earth. And it specifically says here that when Abraham was born, that was during Ninus, king of Babylon, who was, in this case, the third Nimrod, if you will recall from last week. So he was born under the third Nimrod. This is a little chart I put together a few years ago. The LXX versus the MT would be the Masoretic text. And you can see, according to this, that the flood in the LXX timeline happened in the year 3298, give or take, right? We're just doing a little calculator number punching here. 3298 BC. Whereas if you look way down here, according to the Masoretic, the flood happens in the year 2350 in the Masoretic text. So they are 1,000 years removed, meaning the Greek LXX text, the flood is 1,000 years older. And that gives not only a lot of wiggle room, it fits like a glove, because we know that Narmer and Neferhotep, they are the first two pharaohs. I want to talk about them tonight. The pharaoh and his wife, I should say. They unified Egypt in the first dynasty in the year 3000 BC, according to official history. That is 298 years after Noah's flood. You have 300 years. That is like that's older than America is, right? Way older. I mean, it's going back to colonial times. That gives a lot of time to actually found Egypt. 300 years went by. Then you see that another 150 years goes by, 2,850 before Nimrod the First, or Nimrod the Giant, as he's known, built the Tower of Babel. The Great Pyramids of Egypt wouldn't even be completed until the year 2560. But according to the Masoretic text, the Noah's flood has not even happened yet. Noah's flood happens 300 years after the completion of the Great Pyramids. But then Abraham wasn't even born until the year 2166. So the pyramids were around for a few hundred years. Egypt has been around for close to 1,000 years before Abraham was born. So huge difference there. Now, I believe that I have identified the first pharaoh of Egypt. Of course, it wasn't hard. It wasn't difficult detective work. I was just reading one of my favorite books, The Travels of Noah into Europe. And it says this here that it was actually Osiris and Isis. Now, it says this here that Osiris and Isis began to apply themselves to the study of the nature of herbs and to the finding out of planting, tilling, and sowing of corn, which afterwards they instructed their people in and showed the use to their neighbors dwelling in Palestine, of which ruled king and governor Shem, surnamed Melchizedek. So according to this, they were, it seems that actually they were righteous king and queen, Osiris and Isis, and that they were friends with Shem / Melchizedek. And of course, we'll see that it was actually after their death that they were turned into a false religion. That's one of the themes of the Trials of Noah, is that all these mighty men post flood, some of them were giants or whatever, but they became the gods of later times. Now, let's talk about Narmer. Narmer is, I took a little snippet there from Wikipedia, but he is considered the founder of Egypt, the first dynasty. He unified Egypt, the higher and lower Egypt. Upper and lower Egypt. And keep in mind that Egypt is reversed. So lower Egypt is higher up, upper Egypt is lower. It throws me off every single time. And his wife was Nephhotep. So I believe that Nephhotep is the historical Isis and Narmer is the historical Osiris. And this isn't, I'm not the only one. There's many other people out there speculating about this. They actually had a son named Hor-Aha. Interestingly, the name literally means Horus the fighter. So we know that Osiris and Isis had Horus, and that was the name of Nephhotep and Narmer's actual son, Horus. And we know that Horus rose victorious against his uncle Set when Set murdered his father. If you are confused by the storyline, just watch The Lion King. It's just a repeat down to almost the dialogue of the Mysteries of Isis. Here's a picture here. This is called the Narmer palette, and it actually shows Narmer conquering upper and lower Egypt, unifying them. And interestingly enough, on the back side there, you can see two, I don't know, they look like two sauropods to me. In my community, I'm not supposed to believe that sauropods existed, but I mean, I don't know. Maybe they're giraffes, I guess. It could be giraffes. I guess they could be giraffes. I don't know. They don't look like giraffes to me, but who really knows? This is where the Scorpion King comes into this. He's the classic Set character. He would be the Scar of the Lion King. I know that The Rock played him. I never saw the movie. I guess he was a good guy in that. But let's read this in The Travels of Noah into Europe. Typhon the Egyptian, who in all villainy and malice followed the humors of his father Ham, began now to repine and envy at the glory and fortune of the emperor Osiris, insomuch as he fell into a present conspiracy with many other malicious giants for the death and destruction of him and of his greatness. Long story short, the giants cruelly murdered and tore him to pieces, whose body they divided and had hewn out into 26 pieces, whereof every giant had a share in part as a reward and satisfaction for such their bloody and victorious stratagem. But afterwards, these parts of his body were found and gathered together again by the means of his wife Isis, and buried with the right honor and due solemnity, whom after his death the Egyptians held and worshipped as Elohim, as also the children of Yashruel did the like in the desert. Now, speaking about the like in the desert, they're talking about a Baal Hammon, he also comes to the story. I'm not going to read that to you tonight, maybe later at another time. But you notice here that it doesn't talk about Isis collecting his male member and worshiping it, at least not right here. And the perspective of this book is that, the Mysteries of Isis is a corruption of what really happened, right? So it was actually after Isis's death. And we know, interestingly enough, let me just point this out, that Nephhotep actually did rule, that Narmer died and then she did rule afterwards. So it fits the Isis story perfectly. And it was after her death that they, became corrupted. All right. So here we are almost an hour into this. Thank you everyone for your patience. So somebody might want to put a comment down there. If you want to read the Torah portion, start at the 49 or 50-minute mark. We're going to do this time. We're doing this. I'm dedicated all the way to the end. Here we go. Chapter 12. Yahuwah, the ever-living, then said to Abram, walk from your land and from your kindred, the house of your fathers, to the land to which I will direct you. And I will make you a great nation, and I will make your name celebrated and greatly valued. And you shall exist as a benefactor, and I will barak those who kneel down before you, and curse those who lightly esteem you. And all the families of Adamaha shall become benefited from you. I have to point out here that, Islam, the Islamic nations are, I believe that they are a blessed nation, and they honor, Abraham. They esteem him, right? So we can see this promise. I mean, this was written even before Islam was, guys, like the Mohammedans or whatever you want to call them. It's amazing. It's amazing how it's a testimony to Scripture. So Abram walked as Debar al Yahweh, the ever living, had told him, and Lot walked with him, or Lot walked. And Abram was 75 years old and is going forth from Haran. Abram also took man, I had practice this. Sharaya. I can't even do it. Sharaya. And of course, my wife's name is Sarah, his covenant woman, and Lot, the son of his brother, and the whole of his property which he possessed, and the slaves which he had acquired in Haran. And he went forth to walk the land of Canaan. Thus he entered the country of Canaan. Then Abram traveled in that country to the village of Shechem, as far as Alawan Raha. And the Canaanites, or the Kanu Anuya, were still in the land. Yahweh, the ever-living, also appeared to Abram and repeated, I will give this country to your descendants. So he there built an altar to Yahweh, the ever-living, who had appeared to him. Afterwards, he removed from there to the hills at the east of Bethel, and pitched a tent with Bethel at the west, and Ha-Ayah to the east. And there he built an altar to Yahweh, the ever-living, and called upon the name of Yahweh, the ever-living. Then Abram marched on his journey and proceeded to the south. He then goes to Egypt. But a famine occurred. Now, keep in mind, this is Egypt has been around for 1,000 years by this time, by the Greek LXX. But a famine occurred in the land, and Abram went down to Egypt to sojourn there for a time. And as the famine was severe in the land, and as they were approaching Mitzrayim, or Matzarah Yamaha, he said to Sharayah, his covenant woman, see now, I know you are a fair woman, and it may be when the Mitzrayim see you, they will say, this is his covenant woman. It is very interesting. This has been commented upon by the rabbinical community for many, many years, that why is it that he's crossing this river? And he looks and he says this. The thought is that she was crossing a river in a way that she was like kind of lifting her skirt up because she didn't want to get her dress. Maybe she was like wading through it. Now, this is all guesswork. It doesn't say they're crossing a bridge. They are crossing a river. I don't know if she was on a camel or a horse or what have you. But if she's walking, she's lifting up. And the thought is he looks and he sees her ankles. And he's like, wow, your ankles look pretty good. But again, then the question is asked, well, why is he noticing this now? Hasn't he ever noticed her ankles before? So the thought has been passed around, and you could take this for what you will. This really bothers some people when I say this, and not trying to bother anybody. But the thought is passed around that Abraham has never been with Sarah, his wife, at this time. Some people have wondered if he ever did. And you'll be asking, but Noel, what are you implying? Well, I'm not necessarily implying anything, but I know that others have implied it. And it's one of those things, I say that I never know what's going to trigger people, but this is one of the things that have really triggered people. Just pointing out what people in the past have noted, that they have suspected, this goes way back, pre-Messiah, that perhaps it was a virgin birth. Now, I don't think we'll get there in a few weeks. Okay, we're not there yet. But if Isaac or Yitzhak was born out of a virgin birth, I do not believe that takes at all away from Messiah. Now, keep in mind that this was the speculation before Messiah. Once Christianity came along, Judaism dropped it. Christianity didn't want anything to do with it because they wanted Messiah to have a unique virgin birth. But, it may be that there were other virgin conceptions in history, one of which I'm going to talk about tonight, the first Melchizedek, if I have the time. And then, anyways, he looks at her amazing ankles and he says, and they're going to murder me and keep you alive. Say, therefore, that you are my sister, so that they may show respect to me because of you, and my life may be saved by means of you. And on Abram entering Mitzrayim, the Mitzrayim noticed that the woman was very fair. And the courtiers of the Pharaoh also observed her and sang her praises to Pharaoh. and the woman was accordingly taken to Pharaoh's palace. On her account, I think in the writings of Abraham, actually they were there for at least a couple years before she was picked up. On her account, he favored Abram and presented him with sheep, oxen, asses, slaves, and maids, as well as she-asses and camels. But Yahweh, the ever-living, disturbed Pharaoh and his household greatly on account of Sarai, the woman of Abram. So Pharaoh summoned Abram and asked, if you're wondering what disturbed them so much, it was erectile dysfunction. All of Egypt got it. Nobody was able to come at their women, and they're turned on. They want to have intercourse with the women, and they're not able to. And the whole kingdom finally figures it out, and that Pharaoh is unable to come at Sarah, and they figured it out. Why have you done this to me? Why did you inform me that she was your covenant woman? Why did you say she is my sister? For I might have secured her as a woman for myself. But now take your covenant woman and walk. And Pharaoh ordered his men about him, and they sent him away, and his covenant woman and all that he had along with him. This is one of those things I do it, but because of time, I'm going to skip this scene in which Abraham destroys his father's idols. This is in Jasher 9. I wish I could read all of them to you. I wish I could go through Jubilees. I wish I could just spend time reading all the extra biblical books that comment on this, but I already read the Midrash, so I think the story was preserved in that way. Chapter 13. So Abraham went up from Mitzrayim with his covenant woman and all he possessed, and he possessed a lot more now. And Lot accompanied him to the southern pastures, and Abram was very rich in cattle, silver, and gold. Afterwards, he marched from the south towards Bethel to the place where his tent had at first been pitched, between Bethel and this would be, of course, Bethel, to the place where he had formerly built an altar. And there Abram called upon the name of Yahweh, the ever-living. And Lot also, who journeyed with Abram, possessed sheep, cattle, and camp followers, so that the land could not support them living together, for their flocks were so great that they could not continue living together. A dispute accordingly took place between Abram's sheep, not his sheep. The sheep weren't arguing. You never really know with sheep what they're saying. Do sheep of different countries understand each other? It's all the same but you never really know. Anyways, between Abraham's shepherds and Lot's shepherds, and the Canaanites and the Perizzites, or the Pharisaiah, who inhabited the land. So Abraham said to Lot, "Let there be no quarrel between me and you, or between my shepherds and your shepherds, for we are both of us brothers." Man, Abraham is such a peacemaker, isn't he? That just really struck me. He's going everywhere just trying to make peace with people, even with Sodom and Gomorrah. Is not all the country before you? I ask you to separate yourself from me. If you take to the left, then I will take to the right. If to the right, then I will go to the left. Reminds me, Jacob does the same thing later on with the speckled sheep. And it's funny. It's just like whatever Abraham does, he's just blessed, right? Lot therefore looked up and observed all the district of the Jordan, that it was everywhere well watered before Yahweh swept away Sodom and Gomorrah, or Amaraha. It was like the garden of Yahweh. I was thinking about that this week. That's an amazing thought, that Sodom and Gomorrah were described as like, I don't know if equal to, but comparably like the Garden of Eden. The Garden of Yahweh, from the land of Mitzrayim to the land of Zoar, or Zar. So the whole plain of the Jordan pleased him, and Lot removed camp toward the east, and they separated from each other. Abram accordingly settled down to dwell in the land of Canaan, and Lot settled down to dwell in the villages of the plain, but he resided at Sodom. The men of Sodom, however, were very wicked and sinful in the presence of Yahweh, the ever-living. Yahweh, the ever-living, said to Abram after Lot separated from him, "Look upward, and from the place where you are, take a view northward and southward and eastward and westward. For all the land which you observe, I will give to you, and to your race for time of long duration." That there is Awalam. I will make your race like the dust of the earth, so that if a man is able to count the dust of the earth, then he can number your race. Arise and walk through the land, inspect both its length and its breadth, for I will give it to you. So Abram struck his camp and came and settled in the oak woods of Mamre. I'm hoping to go to the oak woods of Mamre sometime. They did dig that up. They did discover exactly where his camp was, the exact place of the altar as well, where the angels visited him. This is what it says in the writings of Abraham, chapter 76. The context here, this is after Sarah is returned to him. And it says here that this Pharaoh actually repented and he became a part of the Melchizedek order. And the king clothed me in his own robes and seated me upon his throne, placing his own crown upon my head and his scepter in my hand. And I did teach him and his people in all the mysteries of righteousness from first to last. For Pharaoh did introduce me into the temple which had been built by the fathers, commenced first by Father Seth and completed by Father Shem after the great flood, and therein. So remember now, I showed you that when the pyramids were completed, and according to this, the pyramid was pre-flood, and there has been a lot of work done to show that it was, in fact, it does appear to be a pre-flood structure. It was started from Seth. And when you understand this, guys, I'm going to do it again. I'm going to do it to you guys, that the mysteries of heaven began with Noah and his family, and before that with Seth, that they had the true mysteries, and from there it expanded all over the world. So who built the pyramids? The Melchizedeks did, right? Seth built the pyramids, and then it was hijacked by Ham's children and the pharaohs. But we see that there were some righteous pharaohs along the way, like this one. He was righteous. It was this last year. I didn't come with illustrations prepared, but you guys have all seen it. There's been like 1,000 YouTube videos made about it with supposedly, I don't know if it's going to be a hoax or not, but they found those huge cylinders that go way down in the earth underneath, which is just going to blow a hole, quite literally, in the official narrative, if it does turn out to be true. Time will tell. I don't know. Someone's gonna have to get out a shovel and start digging, I guess, to find that out. So that was chapter 76. Let's see what it says in chapter 81. Okay, so this is Lot. This explains kind of a little bit more about what was going on in Lot's head, which contrasts, remember, the Peleg and the city of Enoch, and how they, on one hand, they live in this one city where they're all sharing everything, but then in the city of Sodom and Gomorrah, it's like the city of destruction, quite literally, from Pilgrim's Progress, which is one of the reasons I read it to you tonight, where it's a complete opposite. This is this. Now, after our departure from Mitzrayim, a faction arose among our people upon seeing the great wealth which Pharaoh had entrusted to us, for they desired property which they could call their own. And Lot also was among them, which thing grieved me greatly. So Lot, basically, he wants his own private property. But seeing they would not be reconciled, we gave unto them a portion of the common property, and they departed from us under Lot's direction and settled in the valley of the Yarden River. This almost reminds me a little bit of the parable that Joshua gave of the prodigal son. A little bit. Yeah, I mean, Lot did go live in the pig pen in a way. There they went from place to place as their flocks needed pasture until they reached the city of Sodom, or Sodomah, where they mingled with the inhabitants and became one of them. And Lot also built a house in Sodom and settled there. But of all that company that went out from us, only Lot maintained his integrity and did not violate the covenants of his priesthood, nor bow to heathen idol Allahayam. Nevertheless, Lot did not walk perfectly in the way of the fathers, for he dwelt not among the people of Allahayam, but built his own house, and he coveted his own property, that he should govern it rather than holding all things common with the saints. Nevertheless, Lot did continue to serve Yahweh, and Yahweh loved him, and his family and his property grew very large. But I was grieved in my heart that Lot had parted from me, for he had stood at my right hand and had been instructed in a better way. The writings of Abraham, 81. The fact that it's written like in first person, people go like that's not like, that can't be like Abraham did not write a book in the first person. I don't know. I don't know if this is one of those like Ezra moments, like a download later on. But if I were to show you the tales of the patriarchs from the Dead Sea, it is written in first person. In fact, the things that match with the writings of Abraham, it's pretty freaky. Okay, War of Abraham with the 5 kings. This is the Genesis 14 war. And this is where it gets pretty crazy. With Melchizedek, one of the things I'm going to show you if you've never seen it before. It was now in the reign of Amraphel, king of Shanuar or Shinar, Arayahwak, king of Elisar, Kadala Amar, king of Elam or Elam, and Thuda Al, king of, what is this? King of the nations or the Gentiles, the Goyim, the Goy. I got that one there. And they waged war with Bera-A, king of Saddam, and with Beresheh, king of Amaraha, and Shanuab, king of Adamaha, and Shama Abar, king of Zabayayam, and King Balae of Azar. All these were defeated in the valley of Shadayam, now known as the Salt Sea. I almost wish, I am now regretting it, that I'm live, and it's too late. There's nothing I can do about it, but I wish I could actually read to you from the Colburn at this point, because I think it's in the Book of Gleanings. It is absolutely incredible what they describe. This war is so epic in there, and they make it very clear that this is, I should say pretty clear, that this is a war against Nimrod. Nimrod has his confederation of kings, and Canaan is like, Cana is like out there in the wild, wild west. And it's ruled, Og is out there. I could show you passages as well from the Book of King Og. Og hated Nimrod. He hated Nimrod before the flood. And I said that correctly. He hated Nimrod before the flood and after the flood. So they're at war with each other. And this war is so epic. It has like wild men in the wood woven in the ranks. And there's like reptilians and just all, it's crazy. This is just a psycho crazy war, giants, everything. They served Kadarala Amar for 12 years, but in the 13th year, they rebelled. Accordingly, in the 14th year, Kadarala Amar and his allied kings defeated the Raphaim at Eshathuroth's horn, and the let's see, who are these people? I'm looking over here. The Zuzims, or the Zayam at Ham, along with them, and the the Ayamayam at the Devil's Horns, and the Hakareya in the mountains of Shayar, as far as the passers which adjoin the desert. They then returned and came to the wall of justice and conquered all the plain of Amalakuya, who inhabited the palm groves. It's kind of, it's like you got to pay tribute to, right? And there's a lot of discussions about who is America, I guess, in these ancient terms, who is America paying tribute to? And it doesn't happen to start with an I in a political party that starts with a Z. I'll keep you guys guessing at that. Or is it, Rome or what have you? That's the big divide, right? Is it Rome, or I'll just say with, Israel, Zionism? Who are we serving at this point? And if we chose not to, if there was ever a time we're like, yeah, we're not going to do that anymore, would there be assassinations? Would there be, wars break out, that kind of stuff, like it happened here, where the king of Saddam was like, yeah, I'm not paying tribute anymore. The king of Saddam accordingly went out with the king of Gomorrah or Amaraha, and the kings of Adamaha, and the king of Zabayayam, and the king Balae of Zayar. And they commenced hostilities in the valley of Shadayam, and with Kadarala Amar, king of Elam, and Thuda-El, king of the Gentiles, of the nations, and Amraphel, king of Shanuar, and Erah king of Elasar, 4 kings against 5. The valley of Shadayam, however, was full of petroleum pits, and the kings of Sodom and Amaraha took fight and fell there. And the hillmen pursued and seized all the wealth of Sodom and Amaraha and the whole of their stores and marched off. They also took Lot, the nephew of Abram, and his chattels when they walked, for he had settled down to dwell at Sodom. A fugitive then came and reported to Abram, the Abaraya, who had settled at the oak woods of Mamre, the Amariah and brother of Aner, who were Confederate chiefs with Abram. When Abram heard that they had taken captive his relative, he then emptied out the camp of the skilled youths of his own family to the number of 318, and he pursued to judge them and overtook them in the nighttime. And he and his followers defeated and pursued them to Hawabaha, which is north of Damascus or Damashak. And he brought back all the property as well as Lot, his relative, with the men and the people. Now, this is amazing, right? Because I mean, there's clearly there's a lesson to be learned here, I'm sure, somewhere in this. There's a lot of contrast going on where Abram's like Abram's a wealthy guy. He's apparently unaffected by this war. Isn't that interesting? Like, there's this whole epic war going on. All these kings, all these nations coming together, fighting the hill people, the wild men coming out in the valleys are all fighting. People are falling the slime pits. It's the end of the world as we know it. Abram's good. He's got a camp of people. Nobody's touching this guy. But he goes out and he's upset that Lot, it really hurt him that Lot went out and wanted his inheritance, and he wanted to just hoard it for himself. So he goes and gets it back, and he's like, here you go, Lot. Here you go. Here, everybody, just take it back. It's all yours. You don't owe me anything. Kind of interesting. The king of Sodom then met him to congratulate him after his return from defeating Kadaralah Amar and the kings who were with him at the Devil's Valley. And this is Melchizedek. Malachiah Zedek, also king of Shalom, came out to them with wine, and he was priest of Alayon, and he gave his barakah, his blessing, and said, Alayon, creator of Hashamayam and Harat, Barak, Abraham, and you will thank the Most High who gave your enemies into your hand. He then gave to him a tenth of the spoil. Now, if this really is Yahshua in history, I'm totally fine with that. Not a big deal. Though you guys know that I believe that Yahweh is Yahshua. The Yahshua is Yahweh incarnate. The Yahweh is not the Father, but he is the Son. Capiche? Got it? So when I look to the Old Testament now, and I'm like, where is Jesus and all this? I'm like, oh, he just every page, just lick your fingers, go to the next. There he is again. He's everywhere. He's all over this, right? I don't need to look between the lines. I go, aha. When Moses wrote of Yahshua, he was talking about Melchizedek. There he is, right there, or there he is in the burning bush. There he is. Oh, there he is showing up as one of the 3 angels. It's like no, maybe he is. Maybe he is Melchizedek. I don't think he is, and I don't think he needs to be, because Yahweh is not being incarnate here. I don't think he is materializing as a Melchizedek. He might materialize he might become incarnate in other places of the Old Testament. I don't think there's any need for that to be here. And by the way, I mean, I really see this like Abram is just visiting his old college campus, right? He's going back to the hood, right? This is where he was raised. This is where he was educated. But I'm telling you that if this was Yahshua in the flesh, and he's just living there in Jerusalem, just serving as a king, it's like, what are you doing, Abraham? Why aren't you hanging there all the time? And it should be pointed out that it's also interesting. I did mention that Abraham's camp was unaffected. So was Jerusalem, right? Or shalom, or whatever you want to call it, unaffected. The king of Sodom also said to Abraham, "You have given me my life, so take all the wealth to yourself." But Abraham replied to the king of Sodom, and this is amazing. Abraham's an amazing man, isn't he? "I have lifted up my hand to Yahweh the ever living, Allah Yahwan, who acquired Shamayam and Arat, against taking even a shoestring, or from taking anything that is yours, so that you may not say, I have made Abraham rich, except what the soldiers have eaten, and the share of your men who came with me, Anor, Ashakol, and Mamre, allow them to take their share." All right. So this is going to be kind of an interesting little passage. I'm going to read this chapter, a section of this very chapter from the Aramaic Targum. You guys know I really like the Aramaic Targum. I think some of you guys do, but I just don't have a lot of time in these Torah portions to go through it. But this is one of those I can't resist. Honestly, I'm a little confused by this picture. I'm told that is King Og. I get that, but then there's like these two other like massive giant people he's burying there too. Don't really know the context. That's okay. Somebody can explain it to me in the comment section. So this is from chapter 14, starting verse 12. There's a few things I want you to see in here. So, and they made captive Lot, the son of Abraham's brother, and his property, and went, and he had dwelt in Sodom. And Og came. So this is the same Og that will later appear in Numbers. And Og came, who had been spared from the giants that died in the deluge. And amazingly, the Lost Book of King Og, which I will tell everybody is one of the most, it is the most blasphemous book I have ever read in my life. And of course, it's written by Og. So you would figure that, he wasn't exactly fearful of Yahweh. Let's just put it that way, right? But he talks in there about same thing, that he lived before the flood. He never says how he escaped the flood. It's left up to a mystery. You're like, come on, just tell us. Come on. Just it was Noah. Come on, you know that Yahweh spared you. He can't do that, but somehow he survived the flood. But he talks about the when the flood waters are rising and he and Nimrod are fighting, and it's 100,000 giant war. Talking about another epic war. So anyways, he survived the deluge and had ridden protected upon the top of the ark. Discuss amongst yourselves whether that happened or not. And sustained with food by Noah, not being spared through high righteousness, but that the inhabitants of the world might see the power of Yahweh and say, were there not giants who in the first times rebelled against Yahweh the world and perished from the earth? Now keep in mind that this really is interesting that these different source texts all talk about. It's the same thing with writings of Abraham, where it says that Ham was son of Cain, right? That the Yahweh preserved, according to this, the giants, Rephaim, through the ark, but also the sons of Cain. Kind of interesting. But when these kings made war, behold, Og, who was with them, said in his heart, I will go and show Abram concerning Lot, who is led captive, that he may come and deliver him from the hands of the kings into whose hands he has been delivered. So the thing is that I have long pondered this. Like, why is Og helping Abram out? And I think it's kind of like friends of my enemy type of thing. Like if Lot and if the kings of Sodom are against Nimrod and they're fighting against Nimrod, then Og's like, okay, he's so upset. He has no choice at this time. He goes to Abram and he's like, come on, can you help me out here? And he rose and came upon the eve, the day of the Pascha, and found him making the unleavened cakes. And then showed he to Abram the Hebrew, who dwelt in the valleys of Mamre. Anyways, let me just skip some of this. No, actually, I'm not. Verse 14. And when Abram heard that his brother was made captive, he armed his young men who were trained for war, grown up in his house, but they willed not to go with him. So this is a twist here in the story. According to this, none of Abram's, he had like this militia of men. None of them wanted to go fight. So he chose from them Eliezer, the son of Nimrod, who was equal in strength to all 318, and he pursued after Dan. So Eliezer here, I don't know if he's a giant, I don't know if he's a mighty man. He is a son of Nimrod, right? And so Eliezer, this is another interesting piece of the puzzle, because somewhere else it reads that he was like Eliezer was like the prince or the king of Damascus, which is what Nimrod was doing. He was going around and planting his children as kings, that they would have to then pay him money. It was the same way with Pharaoh. He was a son of Nimrod. He was planted there. And so Eliezer goes and he takes all these people out. And what I love Eliezer as a character. I don't know if he was a giant. I don't really know. I don't really know if he was a son of Nimrod. I think that there's a good case for it, especially since he was Abraham's right-hand man. And Abraham is like, look, man, I don't have a son. It's yours. The entire inheritance of the nations was about to go right back into Nimrod's kingdom through Eliezer. But Eliezer was a true servant of Yahweh, and and he humbled himself, and we're going to see that through the next following few weeks. And then here it says in verse 18, this is where Melchizedek, who was Shem bar Noah, the king of Jerusalem, came forth to meet Abraham. And there it is. There's another passage of that. Now that's not the big thing that I want you to see tonight. I'm going to take a little bit of time. I'm willing, if you are, to read from 2nd Enoch chapter 71. So a lot of people, they tell me that they think that Melchizedek was just one dude, and I don't believe that to be the case. Shem was a Melchizedek. He was surnamed. He was given the name Melchizedek, but he was actually not the first Melchizedek. According to 2nd Enoch, there was an older Melchizedek. This is what we read. And the wife of Ner, named Sopanima, being barren, brought forth no child to Ner. Now, Ner, if you don't know, is Noah's brother. So Noah has a righteous brother named Ner, also a righteous wife. And Sopanima was in the time of her old age. And on the day of her death, she conceived in her womb. And Ner, now, I don't think it means like the literal 24 hours of her death, but she's really old. And she's not going to last long. Because maybe it's a translation thing. I don't think he was born on the day he was conceived. That's some fast development in the womb right there. But just, now this isn't a virgin birth, but it is a type of immaculate conception, right? So here we have another case of it. You can get mad at me if you want, but, let's not have misdirected anger here. Just get mad at 2nd Enoch. Just go, just go into your bookshelf and just rip it off your wall and burn it or whatever. But don't take it out on me, all right? This is what it says in 2nd Enoch, that there was some sort of immaculate type of conception that had no seed of man, in which this child was born to a very barren old woman. And Ner the priest, so he's a Melchizedek priest, he's a priest with Noah, did not sleep with her, nor knew her from the day that Yahweh appointed him to serve before the face of the people. So I take that back. I've read this before in preparation. I kind of miss that. Maybe she was a virgin. I don't know. Maybe he took her to wife and he never slept with her. So maybe this is actually going to parallel Abraham and Sharaha a little bit here. When Sopanima knew of her conception, she was ashamed and felt humbled and concealed herself all the days till she brought forth, and no one of the people knew. And when 282 days were accomplished and the day of birth began to draw near, Ner remembered about his wife and called her to himself in his house that he might talk to her. I guess he just wanted to talk to her. I guess, I don't know if he'd ever been with her or not. Was he in the mood, or he just wanted to have a conversation with his wife? I don't really know. But Sopanima came to Ner, her husband, being with child, and the appointed day of the birth was drawing near. And Ner saw her and was very much ashamed. And she said to her, "What have you done, wife? And have shamed me before the face of these people." And now depart from me and go where thou did commence the shame of thy womb, so that I defile not my hand upon thee and sin before the face of Yahweh. And Sopanema spake unto her husband, saying, My lord, lo, the time of my old age and the day of my death has come, and there was no youth in me. And I do not know when the period of my years is past, and the unfruitfulness of my womb begin. And Ner did not believe his wife, and said to her a second time, Depart from me, lest I do thee an injury and sin before the face of Yahweh. He's like, he's about to like break the Torah and kick a pregnant woman here, or worse. And it came to pass when Ner had spoken to his wife, Thilponema fell at the feet of Ner and died. And Ner was very much grieved and said in his heart, Was this from my voice, since a man by his voice and thought sins before the face of Yahweh? Now Yahweh is merciful to me. I know in truth in my heart that my hand was not upon her. And so I say, Glory to thee, I don't know if that should be Yahweh or Adonai, since no one on earth knows this deed which Yahweh has wrought. And Ner hastened and shut the doors of the house and went to Noah, his brother, and told him all that had happened concerning his wife. Now, I mean, Noah in his generation, they'd seen all sorts of freaky things, right? I mean, this is the age of the Watchers and the Nephilim and they're seeing all sorts of crazy births and, angels and all sorts of stuff. So anyways, Noah, he hastens. And they talked to themselves and saw how her womb was at that time of the birth. And Noah said to Ner, Let it not be a subject of sorrow to thee, Ner, my brother, that Yahweh has today concealed our shame, because no one of the people know this. Now let us go quickly and bring her secretly, and may Yahweh hide the ignominy of our shame. There's a word for you, ignominy. And they laid Sopanema on the bed, and they wrapped her with black robes and shut her in the house ready for burial, and dug a grave in secret. And then came an infant from the dead Sopanema and sat on the bed at her right hand. Now, again, this isn't completely uncommon because Noah had a similar birth. I think Joshua had a pretty similar birth too. And Noah and Ner entered and saw the infant sitting by the dead Sopanema and wiping its clothes. And Noah and Ner were tempted with a great fear, for the child was complete in its body, like one of 3 years old, and spake with its lips and blessed Yahweh. Keep in mind, that was how old Abraham was tonight too, when the angel came and when Yahweh spoke with him. And Noah and Ner gazed upon, and lo, the seal of the priesthood was on its breast, and it was glorious in countenance. What do you think the seal of the priesthood is? I've never looked into that before. Discuss. And Noah and Ner said, See, Yahweh renews the consecration according to our blood, and as he desires. This is from Yahweh, my brother. And Yahweh renews the blood of consecration in us. And Noah and Ner hastened and washed the child and clothed it in priestly raiment and gave it the blessed bread, and it ate. And they called its name Melchizedek, surname Melchizedek. There you go. So according to this, I mean, it seems that Shem, if we were to line these books up together, that Shem took on the name of his I guess his cousin. Yeah, his cousin. Though we know that Melchizedek also is a title, right? King of righteousness. And Noah and Ner took the body of Sopanema and stripped from her the black robes and clothed her in very bright robes and built a church for her, another house, a beautiful grave. And Noah and Ner and Melchizedek came and buried her publicly. And Noah said to his brother Ner, Watch this child in secret till the time, because deceitful people shall arise over all the earth and shall begin to reject Allahayam. And having pierced nothing shall put him to death. And when Noah went out to his own place, and great lawlessness began to multiply over the whole earth in the days of Ner. And Ner began to be very anxious, especially about the child, saying, Woe is me, eternal Adonai, or Yahweh. In my days have begun to multiply all kinds of lawlessness upon the earth. And I understand how that the end is near unto us more than ever, and upon all the earth, for the lawlessness of the people. And now, Yahweh, what is the vision, and what is the solution of it? And what shall I do for the child? Will they also go with us to destruction? And Yahweh heard Ner and appeared to him in a nightly vision and said to him, Ner, I do not endure the great lawlessness that has been on the earth in many things, and lo, I wish now to send a great destruction upon the earth, and every earthly creature shall perish. But do not trouble thyself about the child, Ner, for in a short time I will send my chief captain, Michael, and he shall take the child and place him in the paradise of Eden, in the garden where Adam was formerly during a period of 7 years, having the heaven always open until the time of his sin. I just now noticed that. Does Jubilees say that Adam was in there 7 years as well? Kind of curious. Discuss. And this child shall not perish with those who perish in this generation, as I have shown, but shall be a holy priest in all things, Melchizedek. And I will appoint him that he may be the chief of the priests who were before. And Ner rose from his sleep and blessed Yahweh who had appeared unto him, saying, Blessed is Yahweh Elohim of my fathers, who has spoken unto me, who made a great priest in my days in the womb of my wife, Sopanima. Let's see, how much more does this go? I might just skip some of this. But he ascends to heaven. He's not. There's a lot of people that ascended to heaven before the flood. I mean, I have these different books that all talk about that. Well, let's keep reading. We're running out of time. We're going to make it, though. I think we're going to do it tonight. We're going to do it. Chapter 15, after another drink of coffee. Hope everyone is doing good tonight. It was after these events that Yahweh, the ever-living, spoke to Abram in a vision, saying, Be not afraid, Abram. I am your shield, your abundant reward. I will greatly enrich you. But Abram replied, Adonai Yahweh, why should you give to me when I go childless? And the possessor of my house will be Eliezer or Eleazar of Damascus. And Abraham continued, Look at me. You have not given me offspring, so that the steward of my house will become my heir. But Yahweh, the ever-living, answered him, saying, That man shall not be your heir, basically Eliezer. So right, Abraham's ready to give over the kingdom to Eliezer. He's like, no. Just hang with me, Abram. Just hang with me. He's not going to be your heir. But one who shall owe his birth to yourself shall become your heir. Then he took him to the open country and said, Look up to the sky and count the stars, if you are able to count them. Telling him also, Thus shall your race be. And Abram supported Yahweh, the ever-living, and it was repaid to him in faithfulness. He also said to him, I am Yahweh who brought you from Aor out of the Kashadeam to give you this land as an inheritance. But he replied, Adonai Yahweh, how am I to know that I shall inherit it? Who answered him, Select for me a 3-year-old heifer, a 3-year-old goat, a 3-year-old ram, a turtle dove, and a young pigeon. Taking all these, he split them in the middle and placed each part opposite its neighbor, but he did not split the birds. Then the kites descended upon the carcasses, but Abram drove them away. And when the sun was sinking, a stupor fell upon Abram, and also a great and terrible darkness oppressed him. That's an interesting line, isn't it? He then said to Abram, Know this, and be assured that your race will be strangers in a land not their own, and they shall enslave them and oppress them for 400 years. The nation which enslaves them, however, I will punish, and after that I will bring them out with great wealth. But you shall go to your forefathers in Shalom. You shall be buried with beautiful gray hairs, and in several generations they shall return here, when the sins of the Amorrhea will be complete. After the sun set, followed by thick darkness, a bright cloud appeared, a blazing fire which passed between the pieces. At the same time, Yahweh the ever-living cut a covenant with Abraham. Now, I don't have time to go tonight. This is one of those things that, maybe next year, we'll do this next year. I'll go more into the covenant itself, the cutting of this covenant. But it's interesting to point out here that typically in these covenants, you're both supposed to walk through the middle of this animal that was cut in half. But Abraham has been put into a stupor, asleep. And the amazing thing about this is that, so the idea is that had Abraham gone through this, and if he did not fulfill his end of the deal, he would have been in deep doo-doo. But Yahuwah is saying here, I am going to fulfill this myself. I'm going to do this. Even if you guys do not fulfill your end, I will follow through. And if I do not, then I'm in trouble, right? This is more evidence of why I just look in scripture. I'm like, yeah, some people, this is one of the biggest things that people, when they talk to me privately, they'll be like, no, you cover a lot of great stuff. I get a lot of stuff you're talking about. I just don't get this one point. And I'm like, well, I'm sorry you don't see it. I mean, for me, this is so clear. It is so abundantly clear that Yahuwah, this, if Yahshua Messiah did not make this covenant, then why is he fulfilling it? I know that people try to make these theological points about, the son fulfilling for his father and this kind of stuff. It's like, no. Yahuwah is like, I'm going to do this. I am the one cutting this covenant with you. And I believe that he was the one that followed through with it. I will give this country to your race, from the river of Mitzrayim to the great river Pharith, the Kuyanuya, the Kunazaya, the Kudamanuya, the Hathuya, and the Pharazaya, and the Rephaim, and the Amareya, and the Kanuanuya, and the Garagashaya, and the Yavayusea. Moving on to 16. And I do have more I want to talk about the covenant, but I want to get through this. And I think we're going to end on talking about the covenant tonight. Sarah, or Shareah, advises Abram to marry Hagar. And we all know how this goes. Men, they spend their whole lives trying to understand women. I think the this is going to sound totally sexist, but I think the problem is men try so hard to understand women, and we need to ask ourselves the question: do women understand themselves? Because I really don't think that Shariah understood the consequences of what she was saying here. Like, she was not thinking through this very well. And Abram's like, okay, that he was trying to make his woman happy, So Shariah, Abraham's covenant woman, had given him no children, but she had a Mitzrayim maid named Hagar. Now, Hagar, I'm going to show you, is actually the granddaughter of Nimrod, or one of the Nimrods. So Shariah said to Abram, see now, Yahuwah, the ever-living, has kept me childless. Therefore, have intercourse with my maid. Perhaps she will have a son for me. And of course, if any wife ever said this to her husband, the husband would say, well, I assure you, I will not enjoy this at all. And Abram listened to the voice of Shariah. And therefore, Shariah, the woman of Abraham, took Hagar, the Mitzrayim maid, at the end of the 10th year of Abram's residence in the land of Canaan, and gave her to Abram, her man, as his woman. And I will point out here, so if you're unclear what's happening, is that, so she's basically saying, like, Hagar's body is like my own body, pretty much. I mean, that child that comes out, Sarah is saying that is going to be my child. All right. So that will be, we're going to credit that as, and for whatever reason, maybe it started out that way. It certainly didn't end that way. At some point, Sarah's like, yeah, that's not my child. But this explains when people throw the question at me, like, how is it possible that it says that Noah's wife had all three children if she didn't really have all three children? That explains it right here. This is where it comes into it. That all those three children were credited as her children. So he went into Hagar, and she conceived. When she saw that she had conceived, her mistress was lightly esteemed in his eyes. Now, I'm going to show you later, maybe there's a surprise here this year. Maybe, there's been like a Mandela effect and a change. But it never says that Abram actually goes into Sarah, ever. Like, he never does. But he goes into Hagar, she conceives. Then Sarai said to Abram, my wrong came from you. I gave my maid to your bosom, and she sees that she has conceived, and I am diminished in her eyes. So now it's Abram's fault. Like it's of course, it's always, it's always the man's fault, And I could like imagine some of the things Abram said in response. Let Yahuwah, the ever living, decide between me and you. This is still Sarah talking to her husband. It's all his fault. And Abraham answered Sarai, well, your maid is under your hand. Do to her whatever you consider right. So Sarai persecuted her, Hagar, and she fled from her presence. Malach Yahuwah met her, however, at the well of waters in the desert, at the well by the road to the wall, and asked Hagar, servant of Sarai, where are you going and what are you weeping for? And she answered, I am flying from the hand of Sarai, my mistress. But Malach Yahuwah, the ever-living, said, return to your mistress and submit yourself to her. Malach Yahuwah, the ever-living, also continued. Now, notice here, this is really interesting that it didn't say that about Melchizedek, right? It seems to be painting this portrait here that this is Yahuwah in the flesh speaking to Hagar here. Malach Yahuwah, the ever-living, also continued, you are now with child, and you will give birth to a son, and you must call him Ishmael or Yasha Mael. For Yahuwah heard your sorrow, and he shall be a free man. His hand shall be with every man, and the hand of every man with him, and he shall stand up in the presence of all his brothers. She accordingly called the name of Yahuwah, the ever-living, who spoke to her. You are... now, this is an interesting little note here. Pamela thinks that Hagar is crediting Yahuwah to being Ra. See, you are Al-Ra Yah. And the reason why that's interesting is we know she came from Pharaoh. She was a daughter. I believe that her father did become a Melchizedek, but he didn't start out that way. And she may have been one of those who never really converted. We saw the same problem with Jacob's two wives, Leah and Rachel. Not that it was really a problem, but they seem to kind of get hung up a little bit on the gods that they were raised with, and eventually they kind of come around. But you imagine that this was a problem a lot in this world, and it would still be probably in like Hinduism today, where they have a multitude of gods, and every household has their gods, and then a woman is expected to ditch her gods of her upbringing to take on the gods of her husband, and that doesn't always work out that way. So the possibility is here that she is accrediting Yahuwah with Ra of Egypt. I can say this, for I have lived after he appeared to me. So the well was named the well of the vision of life. It is situated between Kudash and Berad. And Hagar gave birth to a son, to Abram, and Abram called the name of his son by her Ishmael or Yishmael or Yasha Mael. Abram was 86 years old when Hagar gave birth to Yishmael to Abram. All right. Again, for lack of time, we're running out of time. I just want to show you here that in the writings of Abraham, it says that Hagar is the daughter of Pharaoh. But then it also says that in Genesis. Okay, we could see that she's a daughter of Pharaoh. Fine. But here in the Targum, it says that Hagar is the daughter of Pharaoh bar Nimrod, which means Pharaoh is the son of Nimrod. So this is amazing because we just saw this with Eliezer. Now we see this with Hagar. We see all these descendants of Nimrod, genetic seed of Ham, all around Abraham. And Abraham's just ready to hand over the kingdom he's making it easy on Ham. Really easy. We know the Ham's going around and his children are usurping everybody and throwing Japheth and Shem out of their thrones. And Abraham's just like, just going to give it to him. And Yahuwah is like, come on, man. Like, you're making this too easy. Like, I took you out of the land. Just let me do my thing. this is like a free ride for you. Just sit in the, don't be a backseat driver here. Just let me do this. I got this. And but it's pretty freaky how close it came to the kingdom being handed over to Ham. All right, I think this is gonna be the last chapter. Then I'm gonna have some closing commentary tonight. The second appearance of Yahweh to Abram and the promise of a song to Shariah. Doing good on time. When Abram was 96 years old, Yahweh the ever-living revealed again to Abram and said to him, I am Al Shaddai or Shaddai. I think this is the first time. Yeah, this is the first time that El Shaddai, the Amy Grant song, shows up in scripture. How fun. Walk before me and be you perfect. And I will give a covenant between me and between you, and I will increase you very, very greatly. Abram then fell on his face, and Allah declared to him, saying, behold my covenant with you. So keep in mind, this is the second time a covenant is brought up or cut with Abram on tonight's Torah portions. It's the, if I'm counting right, the fourth in scripture, and I'll take you through those, of many more covenants to come. Behold my covenant with you, and you shall exist a father of many nations. So your name shall be Abraham, for you shall be the father of a noisy multitude. And I will make you very fruitful, and I will make nations and kingdoms proceed from you. I will also cause my covenant to rise up between myself and you, and with your descendants after you from generation to generation for the length of days, to be of Allah to you and to your seed after you. I will also give to you and your seed this country where you are a foreigner, the whole land of Canaan for a possession for length of days. And I will exist of Allah to them. Allah also repeated to Abraham, now this is the covenant which you shall keep, as well as your seed after you in their generations. This is the covenant which you shall guard between myself and you and your seed after you. Circumcise every male of them, and they shall be circumcised in the foreskin of the body for a distinguishing mark of the covenant between myself and them. This is like fighting words to this day. The non-Torah community, they're like, they don't even want this covenant. They're like, forget Exodus, like forget Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. They don't want that, but they want to even go like back before. They're like, oh yeah, this covenant right here, I'm not a part of this covenant. Like I'm not one of Abraham's children. I'm like I'm like Peleg's children or something like that. They don't even want to go here. This is a covenant between myself and them, and upon the 8th day, every male shall be circumcised. Remember now, we're all looking forward to the 8th day of creation. We got 7,000 years, go through the millennial kingdom, the 8th day, and what happens on the 8th day? We're circumcised, right? So here's the thing, for all of you little seasoners out there, and if somehow you're hanging on to me right now, and you're like, yeah, this Torah thing's not for me. I'm telling you that like you want the 8th day. And if you're like anti-circumcision, then apparently this prophecy isn't for you. That's a little scary. The 8th day circumcision is amazing. Believe me, we all want to be a part of that. To be, to have that perfect circumcised heart. Every male shall be circumcised in their generations, whether born of the family or purchased for money. Also, he is not of your race. So he's just made, and again, for some of the people, they're like, well, I'm not a Jew. Well, Abraham wasn't a Jew either. Like news break, right? Top of the story news hour, Abraham was not a Jew. All right. Like we're talking his great-grandchildren? One of his great-grandchildren was a Jew. I'm trying to think here. Ishmael. No, not Ishmael. Yitzhak, Yaakov, Yehuda. Okay, there we go. So his great-grandson was a Jew. He had many grandchildren and great-grandchildren who weren't Jews, but just one of them. So it's not just between the Jews, but it's also not just genetic. So somehow you could prove that you're not in any way a Semite. Like you are not related to, you're not even related to Shem. Okay. You're related just purely to Japheth or Ham. It doesn't matter at all It says, whoever is the child of your own family or bought for money shall be circumcised. All right. And he is not, even if he is not of your race. Okay. If you are a child of Abraham, you're grafted in. We're not even talking about Israel at this point. Circumcision. All right. Snip, snip. But the degraded male who has not been circumcised shall then become separated from my people because he has broken the covenant. It's crazy how many people are try to push away from this covenant. It's amazing in the church. They're everywhere, and they want nothing to. It's like, at what point do you want to identify with anybody in the Bible at this point? Because I mean, I guess just you want to go with Noah, right? I mean, assuming he wasn't circumcised, I actually believe he was, and I can make a case for that. I wish I did now tonight. The writings of Abraham, he was Shem and Noah were circumcised, and they talk about how they actually withheld circumcising him from direct guidance from Yahweh, because this was going to be a very specific covenant they were going to cut. He was going to cut with them. Elohim further said to Abraham, Shareah, your covenant woman, shall no more be called by the name of Shareah, for Sharaha shall be her name. There it is. I knew it was in the Paleo. Sharaha. For Sharaha shall be her name, and I will barak her, and also give you a son from her, and she shall become the mother of nations, and of kings, and of peoples. Then Abraham fell upon his face and laughed, and said in his heart, when I am 100 years old, and will Sharaha also when 90 years of age have children? Then Abraham said to Elohim, I wish that Yishmael might live in your favor. And Elohim replied, feeble Sharaha, your covenant woman, shall give you a son, and you shall call his name Yitzchak. And I will fix my covenant with him as an everlasting covenant for his seed after him. And for Yishmael, I have also heard you. I have baraketh you, Yishmael, my barakaha will be with him, and I will cause him to prosper and extend him very greatly. He shall beget 12 princes, and I will grant him to become a great nation. But that other is the covenant I will fix with Yitzchak, whom Sharaha, your covenant woman, will bear about this time next year. I did a study once on the 12 princes. I need to dig that up again. Then he ceased to converse with him, and Elohim went up from Abraham. Abraham accordingly took his son Yishmael and all who were born in his family, and all bought with his money every male of the people of the household of Abraham, and circumcised the foreskin of their bodies on that very day which Elohim spoke to him. How do you break the news to all those people? Like, usually you have to prep people for something like that. Like, okay, we're gonna have this like surgery, on this, but it's like he called like on that day before sunset, everybody. He had like hundreds of people with him, hundreds of men, not including women and children, or women and girls, I guess, who he went and circumcised on that day. Anything older than 8 days old. And Abraham was 90 years old when he was circumcised in the foreskin of his body. On that very same day, Abraham and his son Yishmael were circumcised. All the men born in his house or bought with his money, and the foreigners were circumcised with him. So there you go. It wasn't just the Jews. It wasn't just the Hebrews. It was everybody in the household of Abraham. And let's end tonight by looking at just with the few minutes we have left. Your time is important to me. Look at some of the covenants that were in the Bible. I gave the original presentation on this. I gave last year at the Tuck Retreat 2024. No, I'm sorry, 2025, this year, Tuck 2025. And then I think a week or two after that, I did a whole thing on a Friday night. So I don't need to repeat it all here. I'll just kind of go over this really quickly and show that the first really covenant, people say, it's the prophecy. It's the Genesis 3 prophecy. but it's a promise that is made. It's the first really promise that's made from Yahweh to man. And he says this: I will make enemies of you and the woman to the serpent, and of your offspring and her descendant, and he shall bruise you on the head, and you shall bruise him on the heel. So from here, all covenants, any covenant that is cut in the Bible springboards off of here. What some people try to, this affects us. Like this covenant right here, this promise that was made, prophecy, whatever you want to call it, it affects us today. And the case I have made is that every single covenant that's made in the Bible builds off the next, off the next, off the next. It's not just these random covenants. Now, people can make that case. People will make that case because they're like, well, I don't want to be under the covenant of the Torah. And I don't want to be under the covenant of Abraham. I just want to be under like the Genesis 3 covenant and the Noah covenant, which is pretty shallow thinking as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, that was a bit of a dig, a burn, but it is what it is. People love to go with the David covenant. They love to do that one, but you can't do it. You can't do it. If you're going to ditch the Torah, you're now taking a covenant that was based upon these previous covenants. I get if you want to go back to Genesis 3. Be like Genesis 3, Genesis, like 7 through 9. That's my territory. That's what I'm keeping in. I'm going to ditch the rest. But then you can't go with the Messiah after that. Well, actually, Genesis 3 is based on the Messiah. So it's all circular. They're all encompassing. You can't have Genesis 3. I no longer get it. I'm sorry. I just made a deductive argument. I just disproved myself on live camera. You cannot use Genesis 3 and the covenant cut with David without the Torah, with everything in the middle. You can't do it. All right. So the second one we see, I'm not going to be covering Hebrews 8 tonight. That's a big case people use against the Torah. But I have my big defense on that. I love the Aramaic Targum, the way it phrases Genesis 3, and it specifically talks about how the serpent, the seraphim angel, can bite us and cause us damage if we break the commands of the Torah, but that there will be a remedy for the heels in that day of King Mashiach, Yahshua. He comes and he fulfills this prophecy, steps on the head of the serpent. But nevertheless, it's not that there's some sort of magic formula that you can just break the commands, because he kept the commands and we have to keep the commands just as he did, right? So, but he does have power over the serpent, no doubt. The next covenant that is cut is with Abraham. We covered this last week with the rainbow, the covenant that went over right here, this pretty little rainbow. Oh, look, there's double rainbows in both of these here. And this is built again upon what has already been given with Genesis chapter 3. And this is in Genesis 9. We then go into the covenant with Abraham, which we covered tonight. There were two of them, Genesis 15. On that day, Yahweh made a covenant with Abram. And again in chapter 17, my covenant is with you, and it is a covenant that is forever, for all generations. And you can see here that every covenant is an everlasting covenant. So again, if you want to make the case that these are all like not connected and they're just random covenants and you just pick which covenant you want, okay, I guess you could try to make that case. But what you can't make the case is that the covenants are done away with. They are, what he put in place with the Torah is everlasting. It cannot be undone. This right here, I will establish my covenant between me and you and your descendants after you throughout their generations as an everlasting covenant. That was in Genesis. I think that was 17. Psalms 119, 160 says, the sum of your word is truth, and every one of your righteous judgments is everlasting. Every word, right? Nothing has been done away with. So when people tell you that the Torah is done away with, they are liars. They are lying to you. They are feeding you an untruth. They are unbiblical. They're speaking really antichrist language. It's totally antichrist language. They are speaking on his behalf. The sum of your word is truth, and every one of your righteous judgments is everlasting, eternal. It cannot be undone. Psalm 119, 142 says, your righteousness is an everlasting righteousness. And of course, in your Torah is truth. That is the truth. The truth does not change. It does not cease to be the truth. It is the everlasting truth. The truth of truth is his instructions in righteous living, which is what we're devoting this year to, the Torah portion. So stick with me for the following year. If you haven't done these before, learn what the truth is. 1 Kings 2:45 says, the throne of David shall be established before Yahuwah forever. So there's the other covenant that was made with David, and we're not going to go over that, I think, tonight in detail. But that's where Messiah was really developed as coming through the line of David, whittled down from Abraham and his nation down into David. So I will establish his descendants forever and his throne as the days of heaven. Psalm 89, again, that's the covenant with David that was built upon Abraham. So again, some people love to go with this covenant, and they love to skip the Torah. They love to skip Abraham and just pretend like they didn't happen or didn't exist. That's like the ultimate cherry picking right there. I don't need to go through all these. Let me just finish these right here. Psalm 132:12. I'll read this. I'll end on this. If your sons will keep my covenant and my testimony, which I will teach them, their sons also shall sit upon your throne forever. So that's the promise, right? This is talking about this matches up with Revelation 14:12, which is the theme verse here of this ministry. This is what qualifies, this defines what a saint is, a set apart person. People love talking about the resurrected saints of the millennial kingdom, and they don't like to talk about the qualifications of what the millennial kingdom is or was or will be. Here is the perseverance of the saints who keep the commandments of God and their faith in Yahshua. So there's the two pillars of the scripture right there. Moses spoke of me and I of him. They keep the commandments of Elohim, the Father, and the faith of Yahshua, because Yahshua kept the commandments of Elohim as well, and we're to walk as he walked. So that is it for tonight. I hope you guys enjoyed that. And let's do this again sometime. I think this next week I'm going to try to pack in some really good talks. I have Hunter Tylo coming back to bring on Dr. Natalie Atwell to talk about some interesting things we see in the media, kind of social programming through trauma. And then we might do part 2 with the discussion on the lunar Sabbath with Troy Miller. And I really just enjoyed that discussion. I hope you guys did too. I want to remind everyone that at least at this point, this ministry does not take an official position on the calendar. So I hope nobody feels threatened about that, whether you're lunar Sabbath or not. I hope to have other discussions on different calendars as well. But I really enjoyed it, and we'll do this again next week. So, don't forget, I'm not ready to say goodbye yet. See, saying goodbye is like the hardest thing for me when we're together. I love being here with you guys. After this, in about 30, 40 minutes, I'm going to open up the room in Discord at the Unexpected Cosmology. This is the opportunity. This is like when the congregation, we get together. And hopefully some of you don't lose sight of that. Like, let's get together and talk and let me know how your life is going. Let's talk about what's going on in the news. I call it Kingdom Verse because the Bible itself, people come, since I'm on my high horse right now, I'm going to talk about this. I'm still behind the podium. People come in on Friday nights once in a while. Some people, they have this idea of what you're allowed to talk about on the Sabbath or not. And I'm just like, can I talk about the Bible? Like, is that okay? Because the Bible has everything in it. It has like wars and violence and satanic stuff and politics and kings and rulers and what was in the news. It's got like a lot of stuff and, a lot of triggering stuff in it, controversial stuff. So I call it Kingdom Verse because it's like everything goes, everything within the kingdom of Messiah, right? We're putting all the different pieces of conspiracy and everything together. Come over here, talk about, your favorite conspiracy or whatever you've learned, and we could all have discussions about it. So love you guys. Let's do this again next week. Good night, everybody. Have a good Sabbath.
Imagine a kingdom lost in the mists of time, and the sinister plot to keep it that way. Our Father in heaven, sitting in his timeless abode, created the past and the future for those of us who live on the earth. He made the framework and the order. The future is kept hidden, but to a special few. What kind of evil interferes with that order and hides the past as well? This story is our family's inheritance that we now wish to share with as many as possible. We are acutely aware that there is a worldwide deception underway, which desperately needs a counter. Remember, this is the time of the little season. It is the short time allowed to be governed by the father of lies.